The amber glow of the downtown diner cast long shadows across worn vinyl booths as Nicolas Cage pushed through the glass door, the familiar chime announcing another late-night visitor. Rain streaked the windows like tears, each droplet catching the neon light from the "Open 24 Hours" sign that flickered intermittently. It was nearly midnight, and the place held that peculiar quiet of establishments that exist in the spaces between day and night, serving coffee to insomniacs and sanctuary to the restless. Nicolas moved with the measured steps of a man carrying invisible weight. His weathered face, marked by years of Hollywood highs and personal lows, bore the expression of someone seeking solitude rather than company. He chose a corner booth, sliding across the cracked red vinyl with a soft exhale that seemed to release the day's accumulated tension. Behind the counter, Maya Washington wiped down surfaces with methodical precision. At 52, she possessed the kind of grace that comes from enduring life's storms without losing one's dignity. Her dark skin glowed with an inner strength that no amount of double shifts could diminish, and her eyes held stories that she'd learned to keep carefully guarded. She'd been working at Mel's Diner for 3 years now, ever since her husband's death had left her scrambling to keep their small apartment and support her teenage daughter's dreams of college. The diner was nearly empty, except for an elderly trucker nursing his third cup of coffee and a young couple sharing a piece of apple pie, their whispered conversation punctuated by soft laughter. The atmosphere was thick with the aroma of fresh coffee and the lingering scent of grilled onions from the dinner rush hours earlier. Nicolas studied the laminated menu without really seeing it, his mind elsewhere. The past months had been particularly challenging. A string of financial setbacks, a failed relationship, and the growing realization that the glittering promises of fame had left him feeling more isolated than ever. Tonight, he'd simply needed to be somewhere that felt real, somewhere that didn't demand performance or pretense. Maya approached with a coffee pot and the kind of professional smile that serves as master, warm enough to be welcoming, but not so familiar as to invite unwanted conversation. "Evening, hun. What can I get you started with?" "Just coffee for now," Nicolas replied, his voice carrying the roughness of exhaustion. "Black." As Maya poured, Nicolas noticed the careful way she held the pot, the steadiness of her hand despite what he could see were long hours on her feet. There was something about her presence that felt grounding, authentic in a way that his world often lacked. "Take your time with the menu," Maya said softly. "Kitchen's open all night." Nicolas nodded, watching as she moved to check on the other customers. There was efficiency in her movements, but also a gentleness. The way she refilled the trucker's cup without being asked. How she quietly cleared the young couple's finished pie plate. These were the small kindnesses that often went unnoticed, the human moments that happened in the margins of everyone else's story. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows with increased urgency. Nicolas sipped his coffee and found himself observing the diner's details. The vintage jukebox in the corner that probably hadn't played in years. The black and white photographs of the town's early days lining the walls. The way the fluorescent lights hummed almost in harmony with the rain. An hour passed in comfortable solitude. Nicolas ordered a slice of lemon meringue pie, more to justify his continued occupancy of the booth than from any real hunger. Maya served it with another pot of coffee, and he found himself studying her face as she worked. There were laugh lines around her eyes, despite whatever hardships she'd clearly faced, and when she smiled genuinely, Not the professional server smile, but the real one she gave the elderly trucker when he showed her photos of his grandchildren. Her entire face transformed. "You're not from around here?" Maya observed during one of her stops to refill his cup. It wasn't a question, just a gentle statement. "No," Nicholas admitted. "Just passing through. Sometimes you need to be somewhere different, you know." Maya nodded with understanding. "I do know. We all carry our stories with us, and sometimes they get heavy." There was something in the way she said it that made Nicholas look up from his coffee. In her eyes, he saw recognition, not of his celebrity, but of the universal human experience of struggle, of carrying burdens that others couldn't see. "What's your story?" he found himself asking, surprising them both with the question. Maya paused in her wiping of the already clean table. "Oh, that's a long one, and probably not very interesting to someone like you." "Someone like me?" "Someone who's clearly seen the world. I've spent my whole life in this town, in places like this." She gestured around the diner. "Not much adventure in that." Nicholas shook his head slowly. "I've learned that the most interesting stories often belong to people who think their lives are ordinary." For a moment, Maya studied his face, perhaps sensing something genuine in his interest. The diner had grown even quieter, the young couple had left, and the trucker was dozing over his coffee. "I used to write," Maya said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Songs, actually. Had dreams of Nashville, of seeing my words set to music that might touch people's hearts." She laughed softly, but there was no bitterness in it. Life had other plans. "What happened to those songs?" "They're still there." Maya touched her chest lightly. "In here. I write them down sometimes, in a notebook I keep at home. My daughter says I should try to do something with them, but..." She trailed off, the weight of practical concerns hanging in the air. Nicholas felt something stir within him, a recognition of dreams deferred, of talents buried under the necessities of survival. Would you let me hear one sometime?" Maya's eyes widened slightly. "Oh no, I couldn't. They're private things. Silly, really." "I don't think anything that comes from the heart is silly." Before Maya could respond, the diner's bell chimed again, and a man in an expensive suit strode in, shaking rain from his coat. He had the bearing of someone accustomed to having his needs met immediately, and his eyes swept the diner with barely concealed disdain. "This place still open?" he demanded, not waiting for an answer before sliding into a booth near the window. Maya straightened, slipping back into her professional demeanor. "Of course, sir. What can I get you?" "Coffee, and make it decent. I've had a hell of a day, and I don't need some burnt swill making it worse." Nicholas watched the interaction, noting how Maya's shoulders tensed slightly at the man's tone. She poured the coffee with her usual care, despite the customer's rudeness. The man took a sip and grimaced theatrically. "Jesus, this is terrible. What kind of operation are you running here?" "I'm sorry, sir. Would you like me to make a fresh pot?" "Don't bother. Just bring me your best bottle of wine." "We don't serve alcohol, sir. Just coffee, soft drinks, and..." "Of course you don't." The man's voice dripped with condescension. Small-town dive with small-town limitations. Typical. Nicholas felt his jaw tighten as he watched Maya maintain her composure, despite the unprovoked attack. She simply nodded and said, "I can offer you fresh coffee, or perhaps some of our pie. The lemon meringue is particularly good tonight." The man waved her away dismissively. "Just keep the coffee coming. and try not to interrupt me. I have important calls to make. As Maya returned to her station behind the counter, Nicholas could see the way she held herself a little straighter, the subtle signs of someone who had learned to absorb others' cruelty without letting it break her spirit. It was a kind of strength he recognized, one born from necessity rather than choice. The rude customer spent the next 30 minutes loudly conducting phone calls that seemed designed more to display his importance than to accomplish any actual business. He complained about the coffee temperature, the lighting, even the sound of the rain against the windows. Through it all, Maya served him with quiet professionalism, never letting his behavior provoke her into anything less than courtesy. Nicholas found himself increasingly uncomfortable, not just with the man's treatment of Maya, but with his own inaction. In his world of agents and lawyers, of people who catered to his every whim, he'd perhaps forgotten what it looked like when someone had to endure mistreatment simply to keep their job. Finally, the man snapped his fingers at Maya like she was a pet. More coffee, and this time, try to make it before midnight. It was 1:47 a.m. Maya approached with the pot, and as she began to pour, the man suddenly jerked his arm, causing her to spill a few drops on the table. Good God, woman. Can't you do anything right? Look at this mess. I'm so sorry, sir. Let me clean that up right away. Sorry doesn't fix incompetence. In a real restaurant, you'd be fired for that kind of clumsiness. Maya reached for her rag, but the man grabbed her wrist, his grip unnecessarily tight. Maybe you need to learn some respect for paying customers. That was enough. Nicholas stood up, his movement sharp enough to draw attention. Is there a problem here? The man looked up, irritation clear on his face. Nothing that concerns you, friend. Just teaching some basic service standards. Let her go. Nicholas's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. Excuse me? Take your hand off her, now. The man released Maya's wrist, but his expression turned ugly. Listen, pal, I don't know who you think you are. I'm someone who thinks a 52-year-old woman working a night shift to support her family deserves basic human decency. Nicholas stepped closer. And I think you need to apologize. Apologize? To the help? Are you insane? Nicholas felt something cold settle in his chest. The help, right. He reached into his wallet and pulled out several $100 bills, laying them on the counter. Maya, that should cover my bill and a decent tip. Then he turned back to the man. You know what? You're right. She is just the help. Just like the thousands of people who work every day to make life comfortable for people like you. People who serve your food, clean your offices, park your cars. People you probably never see as fully human. The man's face was reddening. I don't have to listen to this, but here's what you don't understand. Nicholas continued, his voice growing stronger. That woman you just grabbed, she's written songs that would make you weep if you had enough heart left to feel them. She raised a daughter while working 3 jobs after her husband died. She knows more about courage and dignity than you'll learn in a dozen lifetimes. Maya stood frozen, her eyes wide as she watched this stranger defend her with a passion that seemed to come from some deep, personal place. And you, Nicholas pointed at the man, you're going to apologize to her. Not because I'm telling you to, but because it's the right thing to do. Because she's a human being who deserves respect. The man looked around the diner as if seeking support, but found only the watchful eyes of the elderly trucker who had awakened and was clearly following the confrontation with interest. "This is ridiculous," the man muttered, but some of the fight had gone out of him. "The ridiculous thing," Nicholas said quietly, "is that you probably went home tonight and told someone you loved about your terrible day, expecting sympathy and understanding. But you couldn't extend that same basic humanity to someone else." For a long moment, the diner was silent, except for the steady drum of rain. Finally, the man in the suit stood up, threw a 20 on the table, and muttered something that might have been an apology before hurrying out into the night. Nicholas sank back into his booth, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline of confrontation was fading, leaving him feeling drained and slightly embarrassed by his outburst. Maya approached slowly, coffee pot in hand. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. But you don't even know me." Nicholas looked up at her, seeing not just the server who had been refilling his coffee, but the woman who wrote songs in a notebook, who worked night shifts to support her daughter's dreams, who absorbed cruelty with grace because she had no other choice. "I know enough." Maya sat down across from him, something she'd probably never done with a customer before. "What you said about my songs, how did you know? I could see it in your eyes when you talked about them. That's not something you can fake. That connection to something creative, something that comes from inside you. They're probably not any good. I don't have any formal training, never studied music or anything like that. Some of the most beautiful things in the world come from people who never studied how they were supposed to be beautiful." Maya smiled, a real smile this time, and Nicholas felt something warm settle in his chest. Would you really want to hear one?" "I would be honored." Maya stood up, walked behind the counter, and retrieved a worn leather notebook from beneath the register. She returned to the booth, holding it carefully. "This one," she said, opening to a page filled with neat handwriting. "I wrote it last month. My daughter had just gotten accepted to the state university, and I was so proud, but also scared about how we'd manage the tuition." She cleared her throat softly and began to read. "Dreams don't ask permission to grow in the dark. They don't need fancy soil or perfect light. They just need someone brave enough to water them with tears and sweat and sleepless nights. She's got her mama's hands but her own mind, got her daddy's smile but her own song, and I'll work these fingers to the bone." To help her prove the doubters wrong, 'cause love multiplies when you give it away. Hope gets stronger when you share the load. And sometimes the best thing you can give is showing them a different road. Nicholas felt something tight in his throat as Maya's voice filled the quiet diner. Her words weren't polished or professional, but they carried the weight of lived experience, of real love and sacrifice. When she finished, the silence that followed felt sacred. "Maya," he said finally, "that's not just good, that's extraordinary. You're just being kind. No, I'm being honest. Those lyrics, they tell a story that millions of people would recognize. They speak to something universal, that parents' love, that willingness to sacrifice for someone else's dreams." Maya closed the notebook carefully. "But what am I supposed to do with them? I'm not young, I don't have connections. I don't even know how the music business works." Nicholas was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Can I ask you something? If money wasn't a factor, if you didn't have to worry about rent and bills and your daughter's tuition, what would you do with these songs?" I'd want to record them properly, with real musicians, in a real studio. I'd want to see if they could touch other people the way they move me when I write them. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. And I'd want to perform them, maybe in small venues where people really listen. Not for fame or anything like that, but to share something real. What if I told you that could happen? Maya shook her head. That's a beautiful dream, but what if I told you I could make it happen? She studied his face carefully. Who are you? Nicholas hesitated. He'd been Nicholas the customer for the past few hours, just a man seeking solitude and finding something unexpected. Revealing his identity would change everything, would shift their interaction into something else entirely. I'm someone who's been in the entertainment business for a long time, he said carefully. Someone who's learned to recognize real talent when I see it. But I'm just a waitress. I don't have any training, any experience. You have something more important than training. You have authenticity. You have stories that need to be told. Maya was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing the cover of her notebook. Even if what you're saying is possible, why would you want to help me? What do you get out of it? It was a fair question, and Nicholas found himself considering it seriously. What did he get out of it? In a career built on calculated moves and strategic alliances, this felt different. Maybe I get to be part of something genuine for once, he said finally. Maybe I get to help make the world a little more beautiful. Maya stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the rain-soaked street. I have to ask, are you famous? Is that why you can make promises like this? Nicholas joined her at the window. Would that change anything? I don't know. Maybe. It would explain why you're so confident about the music business. My name is Nicolas Cage. Maya turned to look at him, really look at him, and slowly recognition dawned. The actor. Oh my goodness, wow. Does that change things? It explains some things, like why you defended me so passionately back there. You're used to having a voice, to being heard. Nicholas nodded. But it doesn't change the fact that your songs deserve to be heard. Famous or not, I'd still believe that. Maya returned to the booth and sat down heavily. This is all very overwhelming. A few hours ago, you were just a customer who wanted coffee and pie. And you were just a server working the night shift, but sometimes life surprises us. Mr. Cage, Nicholas, what exactly are you proposing? He leaned forward, his expression serious. I'm proposing that we find out what happens when real talent meets real opportunity. I know people in Nashville, in Los Angeles. I know studio owners and musicians and producers who would kill for material this honest. But surely they hear honest material all the time. No, Nicholas shook his head. They hear people trying to sound honest. They hear songs written by committee, designed to hit certain emotional buttons. What they don't often hear is someone who's lived the story they're telling. Maya opened her notebook again, flipping through pages of handwritten lyrics. There are more, maybe 30 or 40 songs. Can I hear another one? She found a page and cleared her throat. Small town Friday night, nowhere to go. Same old faces, same old show. But there's music in the silence between words. There's dancing in the way she serves coffee cups and whispered dreams. Nothing's quite the way it seems. The woman with tired eyes and gentle hands knows more about love than they understand, 'cause beauty isn't always loud. Grace don't need to draw a crowd. Sometimes the deepest rivers run quiet. Sometimes the strongest hearts stay private. Nicholas felt chills run down his arms. Maya, that's beautiful. And it's about you, isn't it? She blushed slightly. I suppose all songs are about the writer in some way. This isn't just songwriting. This is poetry. The elderly trucker approached their table, coffee cup in hand. Excuse me for interrupting, but I couldn't help overhearing. Miss Maya, I've been coming to this diner for 5 years, and I always wondered about you. Seemed like there was more to your story. Oh, Earl, you're sweet, but... No, ma'am, I'm serious. That singing voice of yours, the way you hum sometimes when you think nobody's listening, that's special. And those words you just shared, they gave me goosebumps. Nicholas smiled at the trucker. Earl, isn't it? You've got good taste. Earl extended his hand. Earl Patterson. And you're Nicolas Cage, aren't you? My wife's a big fan. But more importantly, you're absolutely right about Miss Maya here. She's got something rare. Maya looked between the two men, overwhelmed. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it, Nicholas said gently. And more than that, say yes to it. But I have responsibilities. My daughter, this job. Your daughter's grown up watching you sacrifice your dreams for hers. Don't you think she'd want to see you pursue something that makes you happy? Earl nodded enthusiastically. My granddaughter's about your daughter's age, Miss Maya. These kids today, they want to see the adults in their lives following their passions. Makes them braver about following their own. Maya was quiet for a long time, her hands clasped tightly around her coffee cup. If I were to say yes, hypothetically, how would this work? Nicholas felt his excitement building. First, we make a proper demo. I know a studio in Nashville where we could record 3 or 4 of your strongest songs. Real musicians, proper production, but keeping the intimacy that makes your lyrics so powerful. Then what? Then we see who responds to it. I have contacts at several labels that specialize in authentic American music, people who appreciate storytelling over manufactured pop. And if nobody's interested, then we've still made something beautiful. But Maya, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Earl sat down at the booth beside Maya. Can I tell you something? I've been driving trucks for 37 years, and I've heard every kind of music there is on late-night radio. What you just shared, that's the kind of song that makes people pull over to listen. That's the kind of song that changes people. Maya looked at Earl, then at Nicholas, then down at her notebook. This is crazy. The best things usually are, Nicholas said. I'd need to give notice here. I couldn't just abandon Mel and the other staff. Of course, we can work around your schedule. And I'd want my daughter to be part of this somehow. She's always believed in me more than I believed in myself. She sounds like she raised a pretty amazing mother, Nicholas said with a smile. Maya laughed, a sound that was half joy and half disbelief. I think you mean I raised her. I meant what I said. At that moment, the diner's phone rang. Maya excused herself to answer it, and Nicholas could hear her voice change to one of concern. Slow down, honey. What's wrong? He couldn't make out the other side of the conversation, but Maya's expression grew worried. Okay, I'll be right there. No, don't call anyone else. I'm coming now. She hung up and turned to Nicholas and Earl. I'm sorry, I have to go. That was my daughter. She's having some kind of crisis at her apartment. Is everything okay? Nicholas asked, standing. I think so, but she sounded really upset. She never calls me at work unless it's an emergency. Maya grabbed her coat and purse, then paused, looking back at Nicholas. This conversation, it wasn't just my imagination, was it? It was completely real. And it doesn't end here. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a pen. quickly writing on a napkin. "This is my phone number, my address. I want to continue this conversation." Nicholas took the napkin carefully. "I'll call you tomorrow. We'll figure out the next steps." "Promise me something," Maya said, her hand on the door. "Promise me this isn't just some impulse. Promise me you won't wake up tomorrow and realize this was a crazy idea." "Maya," Nicholas said seriously, "I've made a lot of promises in my life that I later regretted. This isn't one of them. Your songs deserve to be heard, and I'm going to help make that happen." She smiled, a radiant expression that transformed her entire face. "Earl, it was good to see you, honey. Drive safe out there." "You too, Miss Maya, and congratulations on what's about to happen for you." After she left, Nicholas and Earl sat in the suddenly quiet diner. The old trucker shook his head slowly. "In 37 years of late-night diners, I've never seen anything like that." "Like what?" "Like watching someone's life change in real time. Like seeing dreams get handed back to someone who'd given up on them." Nicholas looked at the napkin with Maya's information, then carefully folded it and put it in his wallet. "Earl, can I ask you something? Do you think I'm doing the right thing here?" Earl considered the question seriously. "Well, that depends. Are you doing this because you feel sorry for her, or because you genuinely believe in her talent?" "The second one. Absolutely the second one." "Then yeah, you're doing the right thing. But more than that, you're doing the necessary thing." "What do you mean?" "I mean, the world's got plenty of people who can sing pretty and look good on camera, but it's got precious few who can tell the truth the way that woman does. We need more truth tellers, Mr. Cage. We're starving for authentic voices." Nicholas nodded, understanding. "You know what the funny thing is? I came in here tonight because I needed to get away from my life for a while. I was feeling lost, disconnected from anything that mattered. And now I feel like I found something I didn't even know I was looking for." Earl finished his coffee and stood up. "Well, I better hit the road. Got a delivery in Memphis by morning." He paused at the door. "Mr. Cage, thank you for standing up for Miss Maya earlier, and thank you for seeing what the rest of us have been seeing for years." After Earl left, Nicholas sat alone in the diner, processing everything that had happened. The confrontation with the rude customer felt like a lifetime ago. Everything had changed when Maya opened that notebook and shared her songs. He thought about his own career, the peaks and valleys, the moments when he'd felt most connected to his craft versus the times when it had felt like just another job. What he'd heard tonight from Maya reminded him of why he'd fallen in love with storytelling in the first place, the power of authentic emotion, of truth expressed through art. His phone buzzed. A text message from his agent about a potential project, another Hollywood production that would require months of his life in service of someone else's vision. Nicholas looked at the message, then at the napkin with Maya's information, and made a decision. He called his agent. "Nicholas?" "It's nearly 3 in the morning. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Michael. Actually, everything's better than fine. I want to talk to you about something, but not on the phone. Can we meet tomorrow?" "Of course, but I think I've found my next project. Something completely different from anything I've done before." After ending the call, Nicholas walked to the window and looked out at the street where Maya had driven away to help her daughter. The rain had stopped, and the first hints of dawn were touching the eastern horizon. In a few hours, people would begin their daily routines, most of them unaware that something extraordinary had just happened in a late-night diner. Nicholas left money on the table to cover Maya's shift, far more than necessary, but he wanted to make sure the other staff wouldn't be burdened by her early departure. He wrote a note explaining that Maya had a family emergency and that she'd be back soon. As he walked to his car, Nicholas felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine excitement about the future. Not the nervous energy that came with hoping a film would be successful, but the deep satisfaction that came from knowing he was about to be part of something meaningful. The drive back to his hotel gave him time to think about logistics. The studio in Nashville he'd mentioned to Maya was owned by an old friend, someone who specialized in recording authentic American music, country, folk, blues, anything with roots and stories. He'd call them first thing in the morning. But more than the technical aspects, Nicholas found himself thinking about Maya's songs. The images they conjured, the emotions they evoked, the way they captured universal experiences through specific details. This was exactly the kind of artistic truth that Hollywood too often lost in focus groups and market research. He thought about her daughter, probably dealing with some late-night crisis that seemed huge at 19, but would be forgotten by next week. He thought about Maya dropping everything to rush to her aid, the same way she'd probably been dropping everything for other people her entire life. And he thought about the notebook full of songs, stories waiting to be shared with the world. The next morning, Nicholas was awakened by his phone ringing at 7 a.m. He'd only had 3 hours of sleep, but he felt more alert than he had in weeks. "Nicholas, it's Maya, from the diner. I'm sorry to call so early, but I couldn't sleep. Is your daughter okay?" "She's fine. It was just boy trouble. Her boyfriend broke up with her via text message and she was devastated. We talked until sunrise and she's sleeping now. I'm glad it wasn't anything serious. Nicholas, did last night really happen? Please tell me I didn't dream the whole thing." He smiled, hearing the vulnerability in her voice. "It really happened. And I meant every word. Are you ready to take the next step?" "I think so, but I'm terrified." "Good. If you weren't scared, it wouldn't mean enough to you." Over the next hour, they talked through the practical details. Maya would need to arrange time off from the diner, which her boss, Mel, upon hearing the abbreviated version of the story, granted enthusiastically. Her daughter, Jessica, would drive up from the State University to be there for the recording session. Nicholas arranged for a session at his friend Bobby's studio in Nashville the following week. He also called a few musicians he knew, people who specialized in backing singers whose stories deserved authentic treatment. "Maya," he said during their final phone call of the morning, "I want you to do something for me today." "What's that?" "I want you to go through all your songs and pick the 4 that mean the most to you. Not the ones you think other people would like, but the ones that feel most true to your experience." "That's going to be hard. They all feel true." "Then pick the 4 that would make you proud if they were the only songs anyone ever heard from you." That afternoon, Nicholas drove back to the diner. He wanted to meet with Mel personally, to make sure Maya wouldn't lose her job over this opportunity. He also wanted to see the place again in daylight, to understand more fully the environment where these songs had been written. The diner looked different in the afternoon sun, more worn perhaps, but also more honest. The vintage photographs on the walls told the story of a town that had seen better days economically, but had maintained its sense of community. Mel turned out to be a man in his 60s who had owned the diner for 30 years. He was gruff but kind, and his face lit up when Nicholas explained what was happening. "I always knew Maya had something special," Mel said, wiping down the counter with obvious pride. The way she hummed while she worked, the way customers always seemed happier after talking to her. She's got a gift for making people feel seen. That's exactly what comes through in her songs. You really think she's got a shot at making it? Mel, I think she's got a shot at changing the way people think about what making it means. That evening, Nicholas received a text from Maya. "I picked my 4 songs, and I wrote a new one today, inspired by everything that's happening." "Is it okay if I share it with you?" He called her immediately. "Of course. I'd love to hear it." It's called "The Night Everything Changed." Maya's voice was soft but confident as she shared her newest song. He walked in like any other customer, just wanted coffee and a quiet booth. But sometimes strangers carry miracles. Sometimes they see what we thought we could never prove. I was just a waitress with a secret. Just a woman with a drawer full of dreams. He was just a man who needed kindness. Nothing ever is quite what it seems, 'cause the night everything changes starts like any other night, but love shows up in strangers, and darkness turns to light, and suddenly you're standing on the edge of something new. The night everything changes you. Now I'm scared and I'm excited, got these butterflies that feel like prayer. 'Cause someone believed in my music. Someone heard my heart and said, "I care." And maybe this is how grace happens. Maybe this is how dreams come true. Not with fanfare or with warning, just with someone seeing you. When she finished, Nicholas had to clear his throat before he could speak. "Maya, that's perfect. That captures exactly what happened that night. Do you think it's too personal? Too specific?" "No, I think it's universal. Everyone's had that moment when someone believed in them when they couldn't believe in themselves. Everyone's experienced the fear and hope that comes with unexpected opportunity." "Nicholas?" "Yes?" "Thank you. Whatever happens with the recording, with everything else, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting yourself be seen." The recording session in Nashville was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Nicholas arranged for Maya and her daughter to fly down the night before, and he booked them into a hotel near the studio. He wanted Maya to be rested and comfortable for what would be her first professional recording experience. On Monday evening, Nicholas met them at the hotel restaurant for dinner. Jessica turned out to be a young woman who clearly had inherited her mother's intelligence and grace, along with her father's height and strong jawline. She was studying pre-law at the university, but admitted she'd always dreamed of working in the music business. "Mom's been singing around the house my whole life," Jessica said over dinner. "When I was little, I thought everyone's mother wrote bedtime songs about their day." "She wrote you original bedtime songs?" Maya blushed. "Just little things. Stories about Jessica's adventures, set to simple melodies." "Do you remember any of them?" Nicholas asked Jessica. "Oh, I remember all of them. There was one about a little girl who was scared of thunderstorms, and her mother sang about how the thunder was just the sky applauding for brave children." Nicholas felt that familiar tightness in his throat. "Maya, you've been a songwriter your entire adult life. You just didn't have an audience beyond your family." "I never thought of it that way." Jessica reached across the table and squeezed her mother's hand. "Mom, I am so proud of you. Not just for this opportunity, but for finally sharing your gift with the world." "What if I'm not good enough?" Maya voiced the fear she'd been carrying. "Mom," Jessica said firmly, "you raised me by yourself after Dad died. You worked 3 jobs to keep us in our house. You helped me with homework every night, even when you were exhausted. You taught me that love means showing up, especially when it's hard. If you can do all that, you can definitely sing your songs for a few people in a recording studio." Nicholas nodded. Jessica's right. And remember, these aren't strangers we're singing for. These are musicians who appreciate authentic voices, who understand the value of real stories. The next morning, they met at Bobby's studio, a converted warehouse that had maintained the character of its industrial origins, while adding the acoustic treatment necessary for professional recording. Bobby Franklin was a man in his 50s who had worked with everyone from emerging folk artists to established country stars. His philosophy was simple: serve the song first, everything else second. "Maya," Bobby said after hearing her sing through her 4 selected songs with just guitar accompaniment, "you've got something special here. These songs feel lived in, you know? They've got the weight of real experience." The musicians Nicholas had arranged were equally impressed. Tom Chen, a session guitarist who had played on countless Nashville recordings, shook his head after Maya's first run-through. "I've been doing this for 20 years, he said, "and I can usually tell within the first verse whether a songwriter has anything new to say. Maya, you're saying things I've never heard before, at least not this honestly." The recording process took 2 days. Maya was nervous at first, her voice tight with anxiety. But Bobby's patient guidance and the musician's obvious respect for her material gradually helped her relax into the songs. Nicholas watched from the control room as Maya found her confidence. By the second day, she was suggesting arrangement ideas, harmonizing with herself on choruses, even joking with the musicians between takes. This was Maya not as server or single mother or struggling artist, but as the creative person she'd always been underneath all those other roles. The 4 songs they recorded were Dreams Don't Ask Permission, the song she'd first shared with Nicholas; Small Town Friday Night, about finding beauty in ordinary moments; Letters to My Daughter, a tender piece about watching Jessica grow up; and The Night Everything Changed, her newest composition about their meeting at the diner. On the final evening, as they listened to the completed recordings, there wasn't a dry eye in the studio. Even the sound engineer, a normally cynical man who had heard everything, was visibly moved. "Maya," Bobby said as the last notes faded, "I've been making records for 30 years. This is something special. This is going to touch people." Jessica sat next to her mother, holding her hand tightly. "Mom, hearing your voice like this, it's like hearing you fully for the first time." Nicholas felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with his own career. This was what art was supposed to feel like. Authentic, necessary, transformative for everyone involved in creating it. 2 weeks later, Nicholas began playing Maya's demo for carefully selected people in the music industry. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Sarah Chen, an A&R representative at an independent label that specialized in American roots music, called Nicholas the day after he sent her the recording. "Nicholas, where did you find this woman? Her voice, her songs?" "This is exactly what we've been looking for." "She found me, actually. Or maybe we found each other." Can you get her to Los Angeles for a meeting? We'd like to discuss a recording contract. Nicolas called Maya with the news. He could hear her sharp intake of breath through the phone. A record deal? They want to offer me a record deal? It's preliminary, but yes. Sarah wants to meet with you next week. Nicolas, I don't know anything about record contracts or music business negotiations. That's what lawyers are for. I'll recommend someone good, someone who specializes in protecting artists' interests. This is really happening, isn't it? It's really happening. The meeting in Los Angeles went better than anyone had hoped. Maya's authenticity and the obvious quality of her songs made the negotiation straightforward. The label offered her a 2-album deal with terms that were generous for a new artist. More importantly, they understood her vision. They wanted to record an album that showcased her storytelling abilities, with production that supported rather than overshadowed her voice. They talked about touring in small venues, about connecting with audiences who were hungry for authentic music. 6 months later, Maya's debut album, Late Night Truths, was released to critical acclaim. The title track, The Night Everything Changed, became a surprise hit on Americana radio stations across the country. The album's cover showed Maya sitting in a diner booth, notebook open in front of her, looking directly at the camera with quiet confidence. The first single climbed the charts slowly but steadily, carried by word of mouth and streaming playlists. Music critics praised Maya's unflinching honesty and rare ability to find universal truth in specific experience. But the moment Nicolas knew they had created something lasting came 3 months after the album's release. He was driving late at night, scanning radio stations, when he heard a DJ introduce Maya's song. This next one comes from Maya Washington, a former diner waitress whose late-night observations became some of the most honest songwriting we've heard in years. This is Small Town Friday Night. So, as Maya's voice filled his car, singing about finding beauty in ordinary moments, Nicolas thought about that rainy night when he'd walked into the diner seeking solitude. He'd found something much more valuable, a reminder that authentic art could still change lives, that real stories still mattered, that sometimes the most extraordinary people were hiding in the most ordinary places. Maya's first concert tour was a series of intimate venues, coffee shops, small theaters, listening rooms where every seat felt close to the stage. Nicolas attended the show at a folk club in Atlanta, watching from the back as Maya connected with an audience that hung on every word. Between songs, Maya told the story of meeting Nicolas at the diner, though she was careful to frame it as a reminder that everyone has songs inside them waiting to be heard. "Dreams don't ask permission to grow," she said, echoing the chorus of her signature song. "They just need someone brave enough to water them. Sometimes that someone is yourself, and sometimes it's a stranger who walks into your life when you least expect it." After the show, fans lined up to meet Maya, many of them sharing their own stories of deferred dreams and unexpected opportunities. Nicolas watched her listen to each person with the same attention she'd given him that first night, recognizing their humanity even as they celebrated her success. "You know what the best part is?" Maya said to Nicolas as they walked back to the hotel after the show. "What's that?" "I still work at the diner one night a week. Mel insisted on keeping my spot open, and I love going back. It reminds me where these songs came from." And last week, I met a young man who's been writing poetry in the margins of his college textbooks. His girlfriend brought him in after hearing my story on the radio. She thought I might want to hear what he's been working on. Nicolas smiled. Was she right? She was absolutely right. His words, they're beautiful, raw and honest and full of hope. What did you tell him? I told him the same thing you told me, that authentic voices deserve to be heard, and I gave him your phone number. Nicolas laughed, a sound full of joy and anticipation. Maya Washington, are you trying to turn me into some kind of talent scout? I'm trying to turn you into someone who helps dreams come true. I think it suits you better than just being famous. As they parted ways that night, Nicolas reflected on how his life had changed since that rainy evening at the diner. He was still acting, still taking on film projects, but he'd also started a small foundation dedicated to supporting authentic artists, writers, musicians, painters, anyone with a genuine voice and a compelling story. Maya's success had opened his eyes to how many talented people were out there, working regular jobs, supporting families, creating art in the margins of their lives. People who just needed someone to believe in them, to provide an opportunity, to help them share their gifts with the world. The foundation's first official recipient was the young poet Maya had discovered. His name was Marcus, and his verses about growing up in urban poverty while maintaining hope for the future were as powerful as anything Nicolas had encountered in his years in entertainment. A year after that first meeting, Nicolas returned to Mel's diner. It was nearly midnight again, and the place looked exactly the same. Warm lights, vinyl booths, the comforting aroma of coffee and comfort food. Maya was behind the counter, just as she'd been that first night. But everything about her had changed. She moved with confidence now, her smile brighter, her voice stronger when she greeted customers. Success had given her permission to be fully herself in every setting. Well, look who's back, she said, approaching his booth with a coffee pot and that radiant smile. The usual? Black coffee and whatever wisdom you're serving tonight. Maya poured his coffee and sat down across from him. You know what I learned this year? Tell me. I learned that the best gifts we can give each other aren't things. They're not even opportunities, really. The best gift is seeing someone truly, completely, for who they are. Not who they're supposed to be, not who they're pretending to be, but who they actually are underneath all the fear and doubt. Nicolas nodded, understanding. And then helping them see themselves the same way. Exactly. You did that for me that night. You saw the songwriter when I could only see the waitress. And now, Maya's smile widened. Now I see both, and I'm proud of both. At that moment, the diner's door chimed, and a young woman entered, shaking rain from her coat. She looked around nervously, clearly out of her comfort zone, clutching a manila envelope against her chest. Maya stood up. I'll be right back. Nicolas watched as Maya approached the young woman, her manner gentle and welcoming. They spoke quietly for a few minutes, and Nicolas could see the moment when the woman's tension began to ease. She's an artist, Maya said when she returned to the booth. Paintings, mostly. She heard about my story on a podcast and drove 2 hours to ask me how she found the courage to share her work. What did you tell her? I told her that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite the fear. And I told her about someone who taught me that authentic voices deserve to be heard. Maya glanced toward the young artist, who was now studying the diner's vintage photographs with obvious interest. I also gave her a piece of advice you once gave me. which was that the most interesting stories often belong to people who think their lives are ordinary. Nicholas felt a familiar warmth in his chest, the same feeling he'd experienced that first night when Maya had shared her songs. Think she'll take the advice? I think she will. People are hungry for authenticity, Nicholas. They're tired of artificial everything. When someone has the courage to share something real, others respond to that. As if to prove her point, the young artist approached their table shyly. Excuse me, are you Maya Washington, the singer? I am, and you're the painter. What's your name, honey? Rachel Huang. I wanted to thank you for talking with me, and I wanted to ask, would you look at some of my work? I know you're not an art expert, but I'd be honored to look at your work, Maya said without hesitation. Rachel opened her envelope and pulled out several prints of her paintings. They were urban landscapes, but painted with a sensitivity that revealed the beauty in everyday city scenes. A grocery store at sunset, children playing in the spray of a fire hydrant, an elderly man feeding pigeons in a small park. Rachel, Nicholas said after studying the images, these are extraordinary. You have a gift for finding magic in ordinary moments. Really? I paint what I see on my way to work, places in my neighborhood that other people walk past without noticing. Maya and Nicholas exchanged a look. Rachel, Maya said gently, that's exactly why they're special. You're showing people the beauty that's already around them. But I'm not trained. I just paint because it makes me happy. Some of the most important art comes from people who create because they have to, not because they went to school for it, Nicholas said. Have you ever thought about showing these anywhere? Rachel's eyes widened. Where would I show them? I work at a bank. I paint on weekends in my apartment. Nicholas pulled out his phone. What's your number? I'd like to introduce you to someone who runs a gallery that specializes in authentic contemporary American art. As Nicholas made notes in his phone, Maya smiled at Rachel. A year ago, I was just a waitress who wrote songs in a notebook. Sometimes life surprises us with opportunities we never imagined. But what if they don't like my work? What if I'm not good enough? Maya reached across and touched Rachel's hand gently. Then you'll be exactly where you are now, except you'll know you tried. But Rachel, looking at these paintings, I don't think that's going to be a problem. An hour later, after Rachel had left with promises to send more images and contact information for the gallery owner, Nicholas and Maya sat in comfortable silence. The diner was quiet, except for the soft jazz playing from the kitchen radio and the gentle hum of the coffee makers. It feels like a year ago, doesn't it? Nicholas said. That first night. It feels like a lifetime ago, and it feels like yesterday. Any regrets? Maya considered the question seriously. No regrets about the music, about taking the chance. But sometimes I think about all the years I spent believing I wasn't good enough. All the songs I didn't write because I thought no one would want to hear them. But those years weren't wasted. They gave you the experience that makes your songs so authentic. I suppose you're right. The woman who wrote Dreams Don't Ask Permission couldn't have existed without all those years of deferred dreams. Nicholas nodded, understanding. And the man who saw the songwriter in you couldn't have existed without his own years of searching for something authentic. Maya smiled. Look at us, getting all philosophical over late-night coffee. Some of the best conversations happen over late-night coffee. As Nicholas prepared to leave, Maya walked him to the door. Nicholas. Yes. Thank you, not just for the opportunity, but for teaching me that helping others chase their dreams is just as rewarding as chasing your own. You taught me the same thing. Nicholas drove home through the quiet streets, thinking about the chain of connection that had started with his search for solitude in a late-night diner. Maya's courage to share her songs had led to her recording contract, which had inspired her to help other artists, which had now connected Rachel to new possibilities for her paintings. How many other Rachels were out there? How many Mayas were working night shifts or day jobs, creating beauty in the margins of their lives, convinced their gifts weren't worth sharing? The next morning, Nicholas called his assistant. "Jennifer, I want you to set up a meeting with the foundation board. I have an idea for expanding our program." "What kind of expansion?" "I want to create a network. Artists helping artists, successful people using their platforms to lift up emerging voices." Maya's been doing it informally, but I think we can make it systematic. Like a mentorship program? More than that, like a movement, a commitment to seeking out authentic voices and giving them the support they need to be heard. 6 months later, the Authentic Voices Network had connected over 200 emerging artists with mentors, resources, and opportunities. Maya served on the board of directors and had become one of the program's most effective advocates, traveling to small towns and cities across the country to hold workshops for aspiring songwriters. Nicholas continued his film career, but he'd become increasingly selective about projects, choosing roles that allowed him to tell meaningful stories. He also hosted a monthly showcase at a small theater in Los Angeles, featuring artists from the Authentic Voices Network. But perhaps the most meaningful development was personal. Nicholas and Maya had become genuine friends, connected by their shared commitment to supporting emerging artists, and their understanding of how one conversation could change everything. On the first anniversary of their meeting, they returned to Mel's diner for a late-night celebration. The booth where they'd first talked was decorated with a small sign, "Reserved for Dreamers." "Mel's idea," Maya explained, laughing. "He says it's good for business. People like to sit where dreams come true." "Does it work?" "You'd be surprised. We've had 3 more artists come through here in the past month, all hoping for their own life-changing conversation. And one of them was a young man who writes the most beautiful short stories. I passed his information along to a literary agent I met through the network. She's interested in representing him." Nicholas shook his head in amazement. "Maya, you've become quite the talent scout yourself." "I've become someone who pays attention. There's a difference." As they sat in their familiar booth, sharing coffee and conversation, Nicholas reflected on how much his understanding of success had changed. A year ago, success had meant box office numbers, critical reviews, industry recognition. Now, success felt more like this moment, sitting with a friend who had found her voice and was helping others find theirs, knowing that authentic stories were being shared, that dreams were being given permission to grow. "What's next for you?" he asked Maya. "I'm working on my second album, songs about this journey, about the responsibility that comes with being heard, about the artists I've met through the network." "And personally?" Maya smiled, a slightly secretive expression. "Jessica graduated last month with honors. She's been accepted to law school, but she's also been offered an internship with a music management company. Following in her mother's footsteps? Creating her own path, just like I taught her." She wants to specialize in representing authentic artists, people who might not know how to navigate the music business, but whose voices deserve to be heard. Nicolas felt that familiar tightness in his throat. The legacy continues. In ways I never imagined. As the evening wound down, Nicolas and Maya walked out to the parking lot together. The same neon sign flickered, open 24 hours, and rain was beginning to fall again, just as it had that first night. "Nicolas," Maya said, unlocking her car, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd chosen a different diner that night?" "Never, because I don't think it was coincidence that brought me here." "What do you think it was?" Nicolas looked back at the diner, where Earl the trucker was just arriving for his regular late-night stop, and where new conversations were beginning, new stories were being shared, new dreams were perhaps being born. I think it was exactly what was supposed to happen. Two people who needed to find each other, finding each other at exactly the right moment. Maya smiled. Dreams don't ask permission to grow. They just need someone brave enough to water them. As they drove away in different directions, the diner continued its quiet work of providing sanctuary for night shift workers, insomniacs, travelers, and dreamers. And somewhere in the warm glow of those fluorescent lights, over cups of black coffee and slices of pie, other life-changing conversations were waiting to begin. Because authentic voices deserve to be heard. Because dreams don't ask permission to grow. And because sometimes a stranger walking through your door on a rainy night is carrying exactly the miracle you've been waiting for. The legacy of that first conversation continued to ripple outward, touching lives in ways neither Nicolas nor Maya could have imagined, proving that when we have the courage to share our authentic selves with the world, we give others permission to do the same. And in a world hungry for truth, for beauty, for genuine human connection, that permission is perhaps the greatest gift we can offer each other. Thank you for watching this incredible story of how one conversation changed two lives and sparked a movement of authentic voices. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories, and share your own dreams in the comments below. Remember, your voice matters, your story deserves to be heard, and sometimes the person who believes in you most is just waiting to meet you. What authentic voice do you have that's waiting to be shared? Let us know in the comments. You never know who might be inspired by your courage to speak your truth.